whatever time of day it is, poetry fans and curious non-poetry fans who got the video recommended to them in YouTube. Welcome to the Poetry News. I'm Martin Gray from Nottingham, UK, home of the Great Cheese Riot of 1766. And I'm joined today by Eddie and Squigs. How's it going? You well? You good?
All good.
Doing good.
Fantastic. It's great to see you guys again. Unfortunately, Arsene again can't be with us this week. We totally don't record two shows at the same time. But Arsene will definitely be back with you next time. We'll have a full house again. So, yeah, we also have a packed show coming up for you today. We have Flying Poetry to the Moon. We have World Values Day. We have love. But we start with one of my favorite countries, or empezamos en uno de mis países favoritos, Spain, specifically with Casa del Libro. Casa del Libro, or House of the Book, is a bookshop with branches all over Spain and online where you can get hold of lots of Spanish language poetry books, some original, some translated, some printed, some ebook, and they ship to pretty much every country in the world. New books I'd be interested to read on their site include Mariposas Muertas, Dead Butterflies by David Sant, and also Selvas de Júbilo, Jungles of Jubilation by Marta Solino. These are just two examples of poetry books that they've got in the past month that they're shipping all around the world. Now, there's a great and long tradition of Spanish-speaking poets, not just in Spain, but all across the world. And many poetry fans have read the likes of Pablo Neruda at some point. And did you know that Spain actually has the second highest number of native speakers in the world? More than English. So this Casa del Libro is a great place to indulge that Spanish-speaking poetry side of yours, if you have one, and to support Spanish language poets. If you're interested, head over to casadellibro.com. So Eddie and Squigs, even, what do you think about this? Do you read poetry in other languages, either translated or original? What do you think?
First of all, it's a great initiative. It's a chain of hold on. It's a chain of bookshops, and it's amazing. I find this great. And yes, to answer your question, since my native language is Arabic, I do enjoy some poetry in Arabic as well. I do read them either in Arabic or in translation, which brings me to what I want to tell you. I do want to recommend these books among other books. They're poetry in Arabic by a Syrian, not a Syrian poet, one of the most famous Syrian poets, Nizar Qabbani. They're called Qasa'id Mutawahisha, which translates to wild poems, and Habibati, my love. He has so many other books. You can both find them in Arabic and in English. There are some of his work that has been translated. So yeah, I read in Arabic, and I enjoy Lebanese, Syrian, Palestinian poetry. It's really beautiful.
I myself am dipping my toes into other language outside the one that I'm speaking now. But I think, yes, I mean, hearing poetry, especially in its original language, is important because there is a difference between translation and transliteration. You know, you actually have to understand some of the fundamentals of the language anyways to get that get the full meaning of the poem, the piece. A few years ago when I was in the Philippines, I came to understand the concept of malalim na Tagalog, or malalim na language. To translate, like it's deeper. It was way of speaking, and this is usually the way writers write, or at least creative writers write, like poetry and such. You know, it's almost like another language, you know, where I'm just trying to grasp my mother tongue, and that there's like in poetics, there's like almost a whole new structure that even funny enough, like it's not commonly spoken, like the deep Filipino. So like common speakers, like people walk around and they have trouble understanding poetry. But I guess, poetry is always not delivered in any language easily. Like it kind of demands your participation in understanding it, of course. But yes, I think it's very important to expose the world, and we're trying to do this at PGN, to poetry in its original form, in its original language, so we don't lose the soul, the essence, meaning.
Well, that's it, isn't it? And I think I know certainly my poetry world is dominated by English language poetry because being native English myself in that sense. But I learning another language, and I had no idea about. Was it a deep Filipino? You said
Yes.
the deep Filipino. So I had no idea about that, and that's exactly why languages are awesome. And languages are also a great way to try and improve in a language. So my Spanish is está bien, it's okay, but reading poetry in another language is a challenge, but it's also a really fun challenge, and it really helps you improve. And so many great Arabic poets, Spanish-speaking poets of every language. Do check out Casa del Libro if you fancy some more Spanish-speaking poetry, and also check out the books that Eddie recommended too. And we will be back right after this. Check out this advert.
Welcome back, everyone. I am How Much Depends Upon a Red Wheelbarrow Glazed with Rain Water Beside the White Chickens, Eddie. And I'm joining you from Batoun, the north of Lebanon. If you didn't get that, look it up. The workshop I'm bringing you today focuses on love, my favorite topic in the world, in poetry, kind of. I write a lot of love poetry. It will take place on Wednesday, the 23rd of February at 6:30 p.m. GMT. In this workshop, you will find the ways in which fresh perspectives can make love intimate or silly, surprising or sexy, romantic or even sarcastic in your writing. This is a generative workshop in which the organizers hope you will be looking at examples of contemporary poetry and some flash fiction that will kind of take in and introduce some cliches and energize this rehashed idea that you may have on the subject. You will be given some prompts to write your unique pieces, and you will have a chance to share. This workshop is open for all skill levels, and it is hosted by two poets. No, and it is hosted by Nora Najarian and Eve Makis or Makis. I don't know. Nora is a poet and a writer based in Cyprus. Her work has been placed or shortlisted in various international competitions and has appeared in magazines and anthologies. Most recently is Europa 28, Writing by Women on the Figure of Europe, which is by Kama Press. And also the other moderator is Eva Makis. I think it's Makis, is the author of 4 novels, a life writing guide, and an award-winning screenplay. So what are your thoughts, my fellow heralds, on love and romantic poetry and love poetry? Do you write it? What are your thoughts on it?
I think we've all tried to write that. Love can, fortunately or unfortunately, be just a continuous, never-ending wellspring of inspiration to write, sure. Although times feel like out there might be a deluge of it. Not to say that there's no necessity for this workshop. I think to do it well is an advancement. Though the concept of love, you get to put it together with old parts and always be new again. Yeah. What do I gotta say about love? You only need to get it right once, kids.
Yeah.
Yeah, still working on that. But yeah, absolutely. I think it's one of the most powerful and oldest and most primal emotions that anyone can have. It's always there, be it the presence of it or the absence of it or the happiness with it or the sadness or the frustration with it. Ultimately, it always comes back in some way to love, which is why a lot of love poetry has gained that cliched reputation that it has, just because it's such a natural thing to write about. Even if you're writing a poem about, I don't know, like a bag of chips or something, there's some degree of love in there. And I know this is much more about romantic love. But yeah, I think this workshop, to give those fresh perspectives on that, is fantastic, because there are always fresh perspectives. There are so many words, so many constructions, so much evolution happening in the world, that there's always going to be some freshness that you can find to write about these things. And it's so important to write about them. Like, even if you write a really cliched, terrible love poem, but it helps your heart in some way, that's great. Not every poem has to be done at an open mic. Some poems are just a step on a journey. So yeah, I definitely recommend this workshop, whether you get a poem that you perform out of it, or whether you just get a poem that helps you out of it. Absolutely.
Definitely. Thank you, guys. We will be back right after this.
Hey everyone, it's Arsene, bringing you another open mic from around the world. And this week we head over to the UK, to the Global Poetry Showcase, not the Poetry Global Network, the Global Poetry Showcase, to express yourself in support of World Values Day, here, now, and wow. These meet and greet sessions are a chance for you to meet other people who are taking part in the Global Poetry Showcase or want to know more, and to share ideas and receive inspiration and ideas from poets. It's time to take your poetry performing chops from the page to the stage to the digital age. This platform is an opportunity for people in all communities all over the world to express thoughts, feelings, wishes, and dreams about how we can recover from the pandemic period. Their next event is February the 14th. Love that day, along with many other dates to follow that. And it will be held online via the Eventbrite link in our description. Global Poetry Showcase. At this point, I'd like to ask Eddie and Squigs, what would this be something that you'd be interested in? Something that's more about poets coming together, almost like a cafe style thing, rather than an open mic specific type of thing?
Oh, I think this is a great idea. I mean, a cafe should be global, a small space with big voices to be heard around the world is a great opportunity. And, can't wait for that episode where we all can get out there in the world and do our segments from a coffee shop one day. Great.
Yeah, it is a great idea. It is a great event, I believe. It's something I like about the Poetry Global Network that we have is that it is kind of this showcase, and it is kind of this link between poets from all around the world. And it is nice to see this developing and other venues and other groups creating the same, not creating the same, or like doing the same as we do, or like not that they're. Wait, I'm gonna rephrase. It is nice to see other communities also sharing the same ideas that we do, and it is a beautiful thing. I do believe it is very important for poets to meet together, or like even someone who is just starting up to meet someone, whether virtually or in IRL, to have this relationship or to have this connection or this kind of conversation with someone they idolize or someone they enjoy or someone whose writing they enjoy. It's beautiful. Thank you, Arsene.
That's it. Well, I've not thought of it from that angle of perhaps meeting someone you respect or idolize or something like that. But I suppose that's another way it could happen as well. But I think it's that, when you share, you give each other ideas, you give each other confidence, you grow together. And exactly that, it is wonderful to see other platforms also doing the global online connection activities. So absolutely. So do check them out. Link below. It's Global Poetry Showcase in support of World Values Day. And we'll be back right after this.
Good morning, good day, good evening, wherever you are in the world. Once again, I am Squigs, reporting for the Poetry News. And this week, I would like to draw our attention to a fantastic article by www.depow.edu. That's the DePauw University website. The article is titled An Otherworldly Experience, Professor and Student to Put Poetry on the Moon, written by Mary Dieter. Now, in this article, goes on to read that some poetry lovers might say that Joe Heithause's work is out of this world, heavenly, otherworldly. Come this summer, they will be literally correct. Silence, a sonnet written by the DePauw English professor, is headed to the moon as part of a poetic payload arranged by Samuel Peralta, a physicist, entrepreneur, and art aficionado who already has deposited some of his own words and written words there on the moon. Joe Heithause's poem will be etched on a nickel microfiche, and it would last along with other pieces of work for 1,000,000 years. And this was, as Peralta had told Heithaus, crazy. It does really feel humbling and exciting, Heithaus goes on to say. Now, Joyce Brinkman, former IN Poet Laureate, in Indiana Poet Laureate, says, I want this to be as diverse as possible, said Brinkman, whose goal is to have a poem from every country in the world, diverse in geography, diverse in culture, diverse in language, diverse in forms. She goes on to say, she realized that the job was monumental, so she decided to split it into 3 volumes, recruited Heithaus and a Butler University professor to edit the other 2. Heithaus is responsible for finding poets from Africa and Europe whose work is inspired by rock, water, or air. And Joyce Brinkman, the Indiana Poet Laureate, is handling North and Central America as well as Asia, and looking for poets who write about stars, the sun, and the moon. The Butler professor is looking for poets from South America, Australia, and Antarctica to write about ice, wind, and fire. And now as well, the article continues with a student, Emily Prince, participating in this project, goes on to say, being involved in this project that will result in poems on the moon is frankly jaw-dropping. Prince, who plans to submit her own poems for consideration, goes on to say, I am a student of poetry and a student of space. Her father, my father, Joseph Allen, 59, is an astronaut, and has traveled to space twice on the shuttles Columbia and Discovery. And this has inspired her love for space. If all goes as planned, the anthology, etched once again on that nickel microfiche, will be deposited into a moon box and attached to the Peregrine lunar lander, which will be built by Astrobotic Technologies Incorporated and launched alongside a NASA rover on a rocket built by SpaceX. Peralta selected Silence, which originally appeared in Heithaus's 2012 book Poison Sonnets. Heithaus said he agreed that it was the most appropriate of the 3 in terms of being on the moon, in that profound silent space. At 14 lines, the poem takes the form of a sonnet, but it is what I might call, Heithaus says, broken couplets. Each line rhymes, but the form breaks the couplets. And so I will be reciting the sonnet, Silence. This is Silence by Joe Heithaus. Silence. No such thing, really. No pitch black either. Right now, some ringing in my ear, some air moving through a duct, and outside, birds, cicadas, while dry leaves slide across the pavement, and even in the dark, there's light. As a boy, alone in a room, scared of the night, I'd stare at the line beneath the door, knowing in the hall my mother's footsteps and my father's voice were near. But now I sometimes want to live there, in some silence, some deep black space of my own invention, where I go back to some conjured beginning before I uncurled from my mother's womb, before words, before the world. And of course, that piece will be sent to the moon. And what a great project, please. Once again, this is the article An Otherworldly Experience, Professor and Student Put Poetry to the Moon, written by Mary Dieter, and that will be found on www.depow.edu/stories, the DePauw University website. I think it's wonderful, and I think it reminded me of in a previous episode we did Dante Alighieri's work was being shot into space. We're getting poetry out there. I want to bring back my heralds and ask them, is there any pieces you would consider to send to the space?
Oh yeah, there's loads. I mean, any poet you love, you want their reach to be as wide as possible, right? And so why not send it out a little bit closer to wherever hopefully at some point the aliens are, or even if it's just some kind of historical record of this stuff. This is when you were reading the article, Squigs, I was absolutely beaming. My face almost hurts a bit from how much I was beaming from that. I mean poetry playing among the stars, and other quotes from that song line by line. Don't copyright us. But it's just I love that idea as well, that not only is it poetry going out there, but they're making such a point of representation, getting poetry from every country in the world. It's such an inclusive thing. They're not just sending English language poetry out or poetry from Europe or North America out. It's just like, let's get a poem from literally everywhere and send it up. And I do wonder, if you were an alien and you, for whatever reason, went to the moon and you found this poetry, how much of it would you be able to read? How many of these references about space and element style poems would you get? In the same way that when we find sort of very old kind of like hieroglyphics in caves and things like that, we get these approximations of the meanings, but we can never be entirely sure because some of the links have got broken between then and now. And I also wonder, can we submit our own poems to this if they've not sent it up yet? Because how cool would that be to get your own poem into space?
Right.
Let's see here. There's a part of the article which says that submissions are, I believe, open till February, but you have to read that again on the article. Apologies.
Yeah. Well, if it is open, get your space poems in. What do you think, Eddie?
It is beautiful. Like the whole. First of all, poetry and STEM coming together. That's something we don't see that often. And having poetry in space, because when you think of things that should go to space, poetry is probably not on everyone's list. But it's beautiful to see that poetry is on that list. And we see NASA and SpaceX and all of these communities working together that this is happening. You have this document, this anthology of poetry from all around the world making it to space. This is beautiful. And even the poem is just beautiful, because when you think about it, you're never in silence. Wherever you are, there's never silence. And then in space, there's silence, allegedly. It's beautiful. Like the whole idea that I want to know more. I want to read more. I want to see if I can submit something. And it's beautiful. Thank you, Squigs, for sharing this.
Yeah. Thank you, my heralds, as well, for your comments. That is, again, the DePauw University website, and the article is Otherworldly Experience, Professor and Student Put Poetry on the Moon, Mary Dieter. And that's very interesting as well, Martin, to say. Eddie, I mean, they say just because, they can't hear you scream doesn't mean it's quiet in space, neither. And I was thinking, Martin, actually, with your article, with your comment, like, what if we find, like, alien, I guess, poetry or writing somewhere else far out there, millions of years old? I guess we'll have, a few million years to figure out what it means, but then this is like as physical as an echo, can be to the voices of now. And yeah, I still don't know how to pronounce microfiche, but it's going to be made out of nickel in the last millions of years. Anyway, do you guys want to say more about this? Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's, if anyone ever finds it, it's there for someone to decode, be it our distant ancestors or beings from somewhere else. Just by having that record, it's there to decode. So it's fabulous.
It's beautiful.
All right, and yeah, this episode I believe was beautiful. You know, this is great. Worldwide open mics, worldwide topics of love, the moon. What more can you ask for? Thank you again for joining us for the poetry news this week, and I believe we'll take it to Martin to have some closing statements as well. Yeah, thank you very much, everyone, for joining us. And please write in the comments. We'd love to hear from you.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we would love to know what you think about flying poetry to the moon, about Global Poetry Showcase for World Values Day, about love poetry. Do you write love poetry? What do you think of it? And also, Casa del Libro, poetry from Spain, Spanish language poetry. Do you read it? What do you think about that? We would love to get a discussion going. So do drop a comment down below. Do drop a share. Do hit like. Do hit the bell icon so you get notified when all our videos come out. And we have loads of social media. And Squigs is going to tell you about all of that now.
Hey, so catch us on our socials. That is the Poetry Global Network on Facebook. And on Instagram and TikTok, we are the PGN Official. And that'll be all for this week. Peace!
Oh, no, he didn't.
I'll be right back as well after this.